Listen, I'm going to, as we talked about, from retail to real estate to research, I grew up in the retail food environment, and I'm going to tell you some stories of things that I learned along the way. It was an exciting business. I loved food retailing. And what did I like about it? It was great dealing with customers and associates. And that's the thing that makes any business successful in my mind. So many companies today talk about the bottom line and profits and earnings per share and all of that type of stuff. And too often they don't talk about taking care of customers and taking care of associates. And my belief all along through my career has been take care of those two groups of people and the bottom line will take care of itself. So let me tell you a little bit about where I started. I grew up in Iowa and went to a community college, and I'll back up a little bit. I went to school and wanted to be a coach and a history teacher is what I thought. I really wanted to coach. But I flunked out of college. So now it's like, now what am I going to do? Now it's nonstop Vietnam. What in the world is going to happen to me? I ended up going to a junior college and got an associate's degree. And I entered a management training program for a food store company in Chicago. Became the youngest store manager in that supermarket chain's history at age 25. The only people younger than me in the store were the bag boys. And so my career started early, and I was pleased and delighted to open this brand new supermarket in suburban Chicago in Naperville. But after about 2 years of doing that, I didn't have much of a vision out into the future. I'm thinking, wow, to be a store manager someday in a supermarket, running a supermarket would be pretty cool. I'd seen store managers and they drive new cars and live in decent houses and never had a vision to say, where could this go from here? But while I was working there, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the food industry, it's really managed from top down and you're really not paid to do a lot of thinking. That's the way the business used to be. So I'm like, one day I'm working as a young guy, my district manager comes in, and I'm going to tell you a cute story. You knew exactly which cans and bottles you could have on the shelves in a supermarket. But somebody came into our stores, into my store, and said, gee, we like the store, but you don't have capers. I didn't know what the hell a caper even was. I'm like, what is a caper? So I went to a Dominic's supermarket, found capers and bought 4 jars of them, took them back to my store and squeezed them. Capers are in little small jars. Squeezed them into the shelf, and the district manager comes in, walks down the aisle, stops, and says, what the hell is that? I said, I was proud of myself, and I said, those are capers, sir. And he said, I know what the hell they are. What are they doing in this store? Well, I thought our customer wanted some and we didn't have them, so I went to Dominic's and bought them and put them in here. He said, we don't pay you to think. We pay you to do what we tell you to do. So I began to think, this being a store manager and with all these old guys supervising me and telling me what to do every day really isn't a lot of fun. But one of the executives of the company at that time started a new company here, and some of you older people in the room may remember the Family Mart store on East Vaughan that opened up here in 1977 or 78. He was going to be one of the executives that started that company, and he called me. We were living in Chicago. It was snowing. It was nasty, and he said, hey, we're going to start a new company in Greenville, South Carolina, and we want you to come down and be a part of that and start this company for us. So now I'm probably 27, had never been on an airplane. I went home and told my wife, hell, we're going to South Carolina. We're going to fly to South Carolina. We came down here and we were a part of that and opening that first store here in Greenville, the second one down on South Pleasantburg. We ended up opening a store in Albany, Georgia, across the southeast. We opened this store. My wife and I moved to Albany, Georgia, and opened another Family Mart there. We came back to Greenville. I ended up becoming the regional manager here and covering stores in Alabama, Georgia, North and South Carolina. And I believe I was about 30 at that point in time. But the thing that was exciting about opening those big brand new stores in the Southeast was we started a new company. We didn't have handbooks, we didn't have company policies, we didn't have rules. Now, that came later as we got larger, obviously. You have to have rules and policies, but it was incredible. Well, one of the things when we moved here, again, young couple from Chicago, it was like, you got to be kidding me. Where did we move? Everybody remember the blue laws? The blue laws. You could only operate a store on Sunday with 3 employees. 3 employees, that included management. So that's all you could do. And there were rules and regulations. As an example, the blue laws said you could buy baby formula in a supermarket, but you couldn't buy a baby bottle. I mean, those were how the laws were written. So I decided, you know what? We're going to open this big Family Mart store. It was the biggest store in the area at the time, 60,000 square feet. We sold small electronics and all of that stuff. It was forbidden, so we roped that part of the store off. We had 2 checkout people and a manager, and then we had some people that didn't dress or act like they were associates. We hid them in the store, and my dear friend today, Johnny Mac Brown, came in and he arrested us. He arrested us and shut the store down. So we had to go down to the courthouse, our store manager at the time, and I said, I was the regional manager, and I said, well, this can't be any big deal. I'll go down, I'll represent you. I see you got a couple of attorneys here in the room, and can you imagine that? So we go down to the courthouse and we talk to Judge Mill Lawless. Anybody remember him? Boy, I do. The press was there, and of course we were these Yankees that came down here violating these blue laws and all these things. And so the judge comes out of his chambers and says, now listen, you the boys have violated our blue laws. How are you going to plead in this matter? I said, we would like to plead insanity. And he said, let's go into my chambers and let's work this out. And he sat down and he said, I don't believe in these blue laws neither. He said, I don't even know why they're on the books. He said, what do you think would be an appropriate fine in this matter? I said, I really don't know. And he said, how about you pay a $25 fine, you boys get out of here. It took about a year and a half, but we finally, with a letter writing campaign to people like Nick Theodore, who was very supportive at that time, who was a neighbor of mine, a wonderful guy, the blue laws got overturned and things really started happening in this town. And it's, when I think back to 1977 and what transpired here versus what we've got in this town today, this is an incredible town. But let me tell you, when we moved here and opened those Family Mart stores, I got my first exposure to a buy-low supermarket. And I went down and checked one out. There was one down the road from us, and went in and walked into this store, and there's a safe over in the corner, and there's a guy sitting right next to this safe on a pedestal, on a chair, with a shotgun laying across his lap. Well, first of all, when you walked in the store, there's a big, full-size steer, a buy-low bull, we called them, on top of the store. This was a small buy-low. And I learned that the small buy-lows had 1 full-size steer on top of the stores. The medium-sized stores had 2. And guess how many the big buy-low had? You're really paying attention. 3, you're right. So you had a 1 cow, 2 cow, and a 3 cow buy-low. So I'm here, my mentor that started this company, the Family Mart stores, became the president of a supermarket chain that my old company in Chicago bought, and he invited me to go down and work with him in Florida. So we left Greenville in about '82 and went to work for a company in Florida. Then my mentor, which is very important for any young person getting out in the world, is to have mentors and sponsors. Then my mentor went to Northern California. I went to Southern California, ran and lived in Scottsdale, Arizona, ran the Arizona and Nevada markets. And so we made a lot of moves along the way as a young couple. Came back came back or was recruited and hired by BILO in 1988 and worked with Marsh Collins and a great group of people who was really going to try and change the future of BILO at that time. Now, the shotguns were gone, with the guy sitting beside the safe, but there were still bulls on top of the stores when I got there. So we started a huge remodel program to build the BILOs of the future, and it was an incredible journey. The last BILO bull was taken off of a store in 94, off of the store in Newton Conover. And we had a herd of BILO bulls, and we called them in the asphalt grazing land behind the warehouse. Bob Howard we gave one for the symphony auction. I hope you still have that because they're pretty precious. We would send them down to an auto body repair shop and clean them up, and we'd paint them and give them to charities and auctions and that kind of thing. I hope they still have some. I think there's one in the Children's Museum, I'm not sure. But the things that we did and things that we accomplished at BILO were unbelievable. But let me tell you one of the things that was so striking when I got here and started the new team, the new vision, the remodels, was we had an officer and director group at BILO, and we would meet, and there were probably 35 of us as officers and directors. And we sat there one day and we looked around the room and we said, what's wrong with this picture here at BILO? And guess what that room was full of? Old white guys. I didn't think I was that old, but it was a group of all white males. And we said, you have got to be kidding me. You know, what's our customer base? Who are the people that shop in our stores? First of all, the majority of our shoppers are women, and there wasn't a woman in the room. And we're trying to figure out how women shop, what they buy, what they do. You got to be kidding me. Feminine hygiene? Are you kidding me? It was health and beauty care, beauty products. So we said, this picture has got to change. And we also realized that, you know, the dynamics of the supermarket world are changing dramatically. And come to find out, we had very few people that even had undergraduate degrees. And then I'm sitting there saying, geez, I flunked out of college. So we went on a program of hiring MBAs, we did MBA recruiting, and we changed the complexion of BILO tremendously. I mean, we ended up having a CFO, his name was Steve Ortega. Steve Ortega. You know, we thought Hispanic people drank Corona beer and ate tacos every day. That's what a group of white people thought, sitting in a room trying to run a supermarket business. So we changed the complexion of the company, the business, and really got aggressive. And we did some wonderful things. You know, I laughed the other day, I saw an app that you can take all these bonus member cards and everything that are hanging on your keychain. There's an app, you can put them on your phone now. I'm like, how wonderful is that? When we started the BILO bonus card, we were one of the only supermarket chains in the country that had a customer reward card. And the team of people that we put together that had to put the database and all the information together on that was absolutely incredible. And the data mining that we did, a lot of people here, you know, in the South and in the Southeast didn't like it, that we were tracking their numbers. And remember when somebody said that the bonus card, the numbers on the bottom, when you did this and you did that or whatever it may be, came up to 666? Oh my God. I said, who's the dummy that came up with that? All these numbers are 666? But you know who bailed us out in that deal? A math professor at Bob Jones University called us and said, you give me a set of numbers and I can divide, subtract, multiply, do this, do that, and I can get any group of numbers to come up to 666. And thank God that was published and things went well. But let me tell you, BILO has been, it's been entrenched in the Southeast here and part of the community. The BILO Charity Classic, the BILO Center, it just makes me sick when I drive by people call it now the BS Center. It's, It's always going to be the Bilo Center. When Marsh and I negotiated the naming rights to that, we were the last bit of financing that they needed to make that project happen. And it's been a wonderful addition to this community, and I'm proud of the fact that we were a part of it for 15 years. And it's sad to see the name changed. And it's sad also to see the number of people that have left this community. It's still Bilo Holdings, but you know, the corporate office, the people have moved to Jacksonville or are part of the Winn-Dixie team. There hasn't been much written about the fact that about 350 people have left the upstate from the Bilo ranks, and it's a sad deal when you lose a corporate headquarters. I just hope that we don't lose the impact here in the individual stores, the Bilo Charity Classic, which has been so important to this community for so many years. So it's something that it needs to stay here. Bilo needs to have a presence here. But I think it's going to be good with the fact that they've got a larger base, can buy products better and those types of things. But it was a great experience. I left in 2002. Oh, excuse me. Let me back up. When I was in a successor management program, before I became the COO, with plans to become the CEO of the company, the guys decided, and I just didn't have a pedigree, and it wasn't going to play that well in Wall Street to say that, gee, Wilken flunked out of school and he's got an associate's degree, and so they sent me off to Harvard to get an advanced management degree, and everybody said, yeah, Wilken went to Harvard and drove through the Harvard drive-through window and he got a degree, and Bilo paid for it. But it was a great program. The contacts that I made while I was there with 144 students there at the same time that were all going to be moved into some type of senior management position at their companies was unbelievable. So I still have Harvard contacts from around the globe, which has been pretty doggone interesting. So that's another benefit of being here and with this company. So you stay in your comfort zone. I'm a retail guy. Then I had an opportunity when I left Bilo in 2002. I had some people approach me and say that they wanted to purchase the property out at Woodruff Road and I-85 called The Point, where the Hertz Celanese plant is. It took us a long time to sort out, environmental issues and this and that, and everybody said, oh, that's polluted ground and all the problems out there, but we did a lot of due diligence, and we ended up buying that property and getting a loan, borrowing money, buying that property, and thank God, our first move over there was getting the Cracker Barrel to move across the street off of I-85 over onto our corner. And it got us started moving forward. One of the things I'm proud of is that, there's some carry on there for me in the real estate business because we remodeled and built so many stores at Bilo. So I thought, yeah, I know this real estate development business, but I really didn't. And one of my life lessons were that, to know what you don't know and then surround yourself with people who know what you don't know, who can help you get through projects. So I went to an old dear friend that built several Bilo stores, David Glenn, and asked David if he would help us develop part of the property out there. So we targeted Whole Foods. And we contacted the local real estate people that David knew and some of his contacts, and they said, listen, Greenville, South Carolina isn't on our radar screen. We ain't even looking at Greenville, South Carolina. And again, if you look at the project out there, and especially when you're looking to do a retail store, you count the rooftops around a location to find out how many houses are around there. And it doesn't look real good when you look at a supermarket location out at the Point. So I said, you're making a mistake here. This is going to be a regional store. People are going to drive from many parts of Greenville and the county. So I decided, you know what, the local real estate person maybe at Whole Foods really doesn't understand the market. So I sent a letter to the CEO of Whole Foods, John Mackey, and said, hey, I'm an old grocery guy. I kind of understand the business. You're making a mistake by not looking at Greenville. And we got our Whole Foods. Now, the local real estate person wasn't real happy that we went over her head, but we got a Whole Foods. And guess what? We had a Whole Foods before Charlotte did. It was 2 years later before Charlotte got a Whole Foods. And that store is doing incredibly well for those of you that have been out there. So with David Glenn's help and me writing a letter to John Mackey, we developed that part of that project. We later were very fortunate that Carolina First or South Financial bought the 50-something acres at the back of our project, which is now the TD campus. And for those of you that haven't driven out there lately, it's incredible what they're doing out there. When the market collapsed and Carolina First and South Financial had their difficulties, those buildings sat pretty much empty. Today, there's not an empty parking spot out there at that campus. They are great corporate citizens. What TD is doing here with the people they're bringing into the community is awesome. And they're doing a lot out there. So now, guess what we're doing at the point? Now we're dealing with a city that says, we want to build a bridge over I-85 that's going to parallel Woodruff Road. And guess where we want that bridge to land? On our property. So now we say, how are we going to develop the rest of what we have out there, 38 acres, when we got to wait and see how y'all are going to vote in November on this tax referendum to decide if you're going to fund the road work that needs to be done in this county and in the upstate. So we're sitting there now just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen, but we're very close to how they want to do it, where they want to do it, what they want to do to relieve traffic on Woodruff Road. I hope it happens, but at the same time, I'm like, wait a minute, if you're going to build all of the stuff that's on Woodruff Road, people are going to realize we're going to have to deal with traffic. But it's going to be interesting to see how the referendum goes. A lot of people think no new taxes. So anyway, that's that. So now I don't have enough to do and thinking about what am I going to do. So I meet a couple of guys, Vince Sordella and Rusty Rohrbaugh, who are in the room, and it's a long story. It's a long, complicated story, but we met a guy who had an ointment that we started looking at, and we said there's got to be more to this ointment than just being an ointment. And we started working with Dr. Wagner here at the Oncology Research Institute. We tried to find an active ingredient in an ointment that we were intrigued with. And again, I could talk forever on this, but we've isolated a molecule, a silicate molecule, that we know has activity on the health front. And I'm going to tell you some of the people and some of the partners that we're working with today, but we identified a silicate molecule. Now, silicate covers about 90% of the Earth's surface. So we've identified a silicate molecule, we filed a patent on this silicate molecule, and it would be like going to a patent office and say, we want to patent air. It's like, no, you can't do that. Why, are you kidding me? So out of this molecule that we identified, we had to find out what is the active or something that's unique within that molecule that's causing activity. So we thought, well, that can't be too hard. I can imagine a scientist in an office taking this molecule, hitting it with a hammer and with a magnifying glass, saying, what's in there? It just doesn't work that way. And that's what, remember what I said? Know what you don't know and surround yourself with people who know what you don't know. We have set up a virtual company that's located, we call it the HS Pharma World Headquarters over on Coffee Street in a little corner office. And we work with some world-renowned scientists and doctors around the globe that Vince, this is a great story. When we wanted to crack open that molecule and find out what was the active ingredient, the actual active in that molecule, we were told to go to a lab in Germany, and they could help us with this. Now, this silicate molecule is an inorganic molecule, and most people don't do inorganic chemistry. In drugs and pharmaceuticals, 99.9% of them are organic. So we have an inorganic molecule. So Vince is hot on this. He calls these people in Germany and, yeah, we can help you, we can help you. Now we have to have, we don't have an actual patent filed on this, so we got to be pretty secretive about what we're doing. So we have to have confidentiality agreements signed, NDAs signed. We do this, attorneys, God bless them. Takes us another 6, 8, 10 weeks to get this done. And Vince, for those of you that know Vince, he calls, he's all excited. Yeah, these guys can do it. These Germans, yeah, they got it figured out. By the time we tell them what we've got and what we need, they say, geez, we can't do it. We don't have the capabilities here, but Professor PhD so-and-so at Oxford, that's the person you need to contact. Oh, Vince, he calls me, yeah, we got it this time. Man, I'm going to call this guy in Oxford, same process, 8, 10, 12 weeks, get NDAs signed, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? Geez, we can't do that. We don't have the capabilities. So now we're from there, they send us to MIT. We go to Cal Berkeley. We go to Stanford. I don't know, Vince, where the hell else you all went. But if you can imagine, every time we're told no. We finally, what are the labs, Vince, where the guy said he... The Berkeley Laboratories. Oh, Vince is like, this guy's incredible. And he said he probably could do what we needed to have done. Might take him 2 years, and it would be $1 million. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. We're a startup company. We got no money. We don't have that kind of time. We finally found our guy at Lakehead University in Thunder Bay, Ontario, who's a silicate expert. And Vince called him and said, here's what we got, here's what we're doing. And he said, yeah, he said, it might take me a week or longer, but I'll figure this out for you. So he did, and he's identified active silicate nanoparticles within our large molecule that are the active, that cause activity against bacteria, infections, and cancer. So I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. So our main partner now, when we got done working with this guy, he said, when Steve Kinraid, Dr. Kinraid identified the nanoparticles, he said, listen, I'm the world expert on silicates and silicate nanoparticles, but he said there's one guy in the world that knows what these nanoparticles would do in a human body. And that's Jonathan Powell, an MD, PhD, at the Medical Research Council in Cambridge in the UK. And he said, we need to get this guy on our team with what you guys are doing today. We called Jonathan, Dr. Powell, got him on the team, and those are our 2 leading experts that we're working with today. Now, since we've identified this molecule, we've been to TGen, the Translational Genomics Research Institute in Scottsdale, Arizona, where Dr. Von Hoff, who's on the National Pancreatic Dream Team, and Dr. Gately, we've done 4 preclinical studies, mouse models. We've done pancreatic, melanoma, breast, and lung studies, and we've shown activity in all 4 of those studies. We're redoing our formula as we speak, sizing the nanoparticles a little differently and going back for another melanoma study, hopefully by the end of the year. And that's going to lead us into phase 1 human trials, which we think that we'll probably do in the UK. We're looking with Dr. Powell and his connections over there to possibly do that. We're trying to see just to weigh our options. Is it best to do it there or here? So we're very excited about our aqueous solution that would be injected IV on the cancer front. Now, we're also working with a topical ointment to take these nanoparticles and put it in a topical ointment. And we're testing that product at the University of Miami at the Miller School of Medicine with Dr. Kirshner and Stephen Davis. We do porcine pig models down there, and our tests down there we're using against an infectious wound, testing against staph infection and MRSA, that bad stuff. So we're really focusing on infectious wounds in that area. So we're going back to Miami. We're doing reformulation on that. Dr. Kinraid's working with us on that, and we're going to be going back to Miami and completing that study by the end of the year, and then hopefully that will lead us into human trials on infectious wounds as well. So that's kind of what I'm doing. That's what we do, Vince and Russ and I, and our real estate project's going great. We're happy about that, but I think the lesson here is, people say, how in the world did you ever get involved in this pharma stuff and biotech and on and on? Oh, and one of the things I will say is that we've done all of this without receiving a dime from anybody, not individuals, but from any institute, any government funds or anything from the state of South Carolina. In fact, one of the things I'm going to tell you is when we were looking for money, we went to New York and we went to California. In New York, at the Merrill Lynch World Healthcare headquarters with all their people there, we explained what we were doing. And they're like, the one guy says, hey, listen, now, where are you guys from again? I said, we're from South Carolina. And the guy says, here's our first bit of advice for you guys. Get the hell out of South Carolina and go someplace where people are going to understand what you're doing and are going to take you seriously. Go to Raleigh, go to New Jersey, go to Boston, go someplace. The guy says, you don't even have a good hotel in your state. What? And the one guy says, no, what about that place down on the coast, that, what is the name of that place, Vince?
Sanctuary.
Oh, the Sanctuary. I forgot what it was. Yeah, it's a great place. They said, oh yeah, that's a nice hotel. And we're like, you gotta be kidding me. Well, we say, we live there. We live there. We ain't gonna move. But anyway, it's tough getting recognized, and especially when you look at jokers like me. People look at me and say, wow, you're a grocery guy. You're a grocery guy, for crying out loud. What are you doing here? It's difficult for us to put on a medical front or a scientific front when we don't have doctors that live and work with us here. But let me tell you, what our science is so complicated, and when you can consider we're from Germany to Oxford to MIT to Cal Berkeley, all over the country, and we can't find anybody that can help us identify what we've got until we find this weird guy in Canada that could help us, and Dr. Powell. So we don't have a lot of people here that we work with, which makes it a little unusual for a company to be headquartered and doing what we're doing here. But it's been a great ride. We're very excited about where we're at. And I just want to tell you one other thing that I did. For 10 years, I taught an entrepreneurial leadership class at Clemson, and I would highly advise everybody in this room to, at some point in time in your career, in your life, to go teach a class somewhere, to get involved with students and young people. It will open your eyes to a whole new world to find out what's going on out there. It really is. It was very rewarding. I got to the point where it got to be a drudgery having to go over and do it. It takes a lot of time. The students are very needy. I still have students call, talk to me, Mr. Wilken, I got a business plan. Will you look at it? I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about doing that. But it's been something that's been very, very rewarding, and something that I would absolutely recommend for everybody at some point in your career, in your professional life, your personal life, is to teach a class somewhere. Would highly recommend that. And let me tell you, some of the things, I've got all these little slogans and sayings that I tell young people, and they continually say, Mr. Wilken, I forgot to write this down, or I didn't write that down. What about this? What about that? And one of the things that I did in my class is I had business people from the community come out and tell their story. My son called it, he's an MBA from the Tar Heel School, whatever that is. And but he said the class really was, although they had corporate leaders that would come in and speak at their MBA classes, I would have guys like Mark Johnston, here in town, Carl Sobosinski, Jim Anthony, Vivian Wong, people like that would come in and tell their story, their successes and their failures, and things that they had to do to be successful. The kids absolutely loved it. And the message from a lot of these folks are, if you want to be amazing, hang around with amazing people. You want to be stupid, hang around with stupid people. But if you want to be amazing, hang around with amazing people. Just simple life lessons that I give the kids. I have hundreds of them that I tell them. And I'll run into somebody along the way, wherever, and somebody will say, yep, Mr. Wilken, I was in your class. Surround yourself with people who know what you don't know. I remembered it. And those are life lessons that are pretty darn important. But I loved it. I highly recommend you do it at some point in time. So listen, We'll pass a collection plate. We're looking to raise money in our pharmaceutical business. We'll pass a collection plate, or Russ will have stock certificates at the back door for anybody that wants to get involved on their way out. Thank you very much. Thanks.